Okay, so now with our underwater test over, we've come here to Bournemouth Pier to drop our tough cameras 15 feet onto the sand below. Now let's see how they get on. Okay, so first of all we've got the Olympus Tough TG310. Next up, got the Pentax Optio WG1. Next, it's the Sony Cybershot TX10. Now we've got the Panasonic Lumix FT3. And finally, the Fujifilm XP30. So the first one is the Sony TX10. Now once again, the front panel have a few issues pulling it down, but still takes a photo. Okay, so next up we've got the Pentax WG1, and I'll just take a shot, and the Pentax works fine. Okay, so next up is the Olympus TG310. Okay, so we have a working screen and it'll take a photo, so it's a thumbs up for the TG310 as well. Okay, so next up we've got the Panasonic FT3. Okay, so it's turning on. And it's taking a photo, so it's another thumbs up for the Panasonic FT3. Okay, so finally we've got the Fuji XP30. Yeah, that turns on fine, it's got power, and it's taking a photo. So the Fuji has survived as well. Okay, so we finished our freeze, water and impact test, and all 5 cameras have survived. None of them have died yet, but there has been a fair amount of damage and there have been a few issues we found with each model. Now we'll start with the Sony TX10. Now the main issues we found with this were the sliding front panel froze in the first test, underwater had a tendency to slide up at the most inopportune moments, and also the touchscreen LCD didn't work underwater. So even though it took great photos, not really a great camera for using in extreme sports. Next up really is in complete contrast to the Sony TX10, the Olympus TG310, which survived all the tests perfectly fine. The rubberized buttons were especially excellent. However, the image quality was pretty bad. Image noise showed up quite obviously, and the video was quite dark and quite grainy. The Pentax WG1 certainly looks the part. I had a few issues with the battery initially in the freeze test, where it showed up that it wasn't actually working. However, powered on fine. After a few minutes, battery life came back. Then in the underwater test, actually turned itself off whilst it was underwater, whilst it was videoing, which is a little bit worrying. Next up, we've got the Panasonic FT3, which we have to say was excellent throughout all of the tests. The only slight issue we had just around the lens here, around the lens surround, actually became quite sharp and jagged where the paint came away. But other than that, great little camera, took some fantastic photos. The only problem is it is over £300. It's the most expensive camera in the group test. The Fuji XP30, which was £200, performed very well throughout all the tests as well. Image quality was pretty decent. The only test it had a bit of a failing was the freeze test, where the battery initially didn't work that great. So we have to say that the 2 star players were the Fuji and the Panasonic,